Today's learning target is I can use proportions to solve real-world problems.
Today we're going to talk about proportions. And proportions are just two ratios that are equal. So, for example, right here is a proportion. Okay, I can take, here's a ratio, 1 to 2. And if I were to times both those by 10, it would get 10 to 20. So they are equal. They're a proportion. Here's another way to write a ratio, 10 to 15. And if I divided both of these by 5, I would get 2 to 3. Those would be a proportion because they're equal. Okay, same thing here, 4 to 7. If I were to times both these by 2, I would get 8 to 14. So these are a proportion because they're equal.
There are a number of different ways that we can solve a proportion. Okay, so here we're looking to find what we'd have to put in here for x in order to make this a proportion so that they're equal. Now we can look at this just like fractions. So when we take a look at fractions, if I were looking at this, I'd say, what can I multiply 9 by to get 36? And I would look at that and say 4. Now, just like with finding equivalent fractions, as long as I do the same to both the top and the bottom, I'm going to have a proportion or an equivalent fraction. So in this case, when I multiplied that out, I get 12.8. So x equals 12.8.
Sometimes you'll have a ratio that looks like this, where it's not easy to figure out what I could multiply this bottom number by in order to get 51. Okay, nothing comes to mind. 8.5 times what gives me 51? When that's the case, I want to use what we've done before, my cross products, to write an equation to help me solve this. So remember, with the cross products, I can times this, and that, if the ratio is proportionate, that will equal this times this. So to set this one up, I have 51 times m right there, and 42 times 8.5 right here, and those will be equal. When I multiplied this out right here, I got 357, and now remember I want to get m by itself. I want to solve for m. So 51 times m, I want to divide by 51 on both sides to keep it equal. And the reason I did that is it canceled that 51 times m out. Now I'm left with m equals, that would equal 7.
In this problem here, it says the wait time to ride a roller coaster is 20 minutes when 160 people are in line. At this rate, how long is the wait time when 220 people are in line? So I've underlined what I need and what I'm looking for. So now I'm going to make this into a proportion problem. So I wrote down my first part here. I know it takes, with 160 people, 20 minutes. So now I'm looking to see how many, or what's the wait time for 220 people.
So I created a proportion here. I wanted to find out how many minutes for 220 people. And since I set this up as a proportion, I can easily solve for this m by setting up an equation where I find my cross products. So here I set up my equation. 20 times 220 is going to be equal to 160 times m. And now I simply solve the problem. So I multiplied this out. I got 4,400 is equal to 160 m. Now I'll divide each side by 160 because I want to get that m by itself, and that cancels it out. Okay, and so once I do that, I'm left with 4,400 divided by 160. And when I solve that, I get 27.5 or 27.5. And now don't forget your label. Okay, we always want to have our labels, and that's going to be m was minutes. So I abbreviate it just like that.
In this problem here, I have this person paid $30 for 4 students to visit an art museum, and I'm going to find the cost for 20 students. So I wrote down here what I needed. So it's $30 for 4 students, and I want to find a proportion here. And so I put an x here because I'm trying to find the cost for 20 students. So I'm going to look at this and I'm going to say I can get this proportion here by timesing both by 5, because I know 4 times 5 is 20. So that means I have to do 30 times 5, and I know from mental math That's going to give me 150, and I'm dealing with dollars. So that one ended up to be fairly simple, actually.